Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today. We are going to get started very shortly. We're just letting people give a chance to people to sign on and get situated because we have a very fascinating and inspiring group of people here today that we're going to be hearing from. My name is Shiri Orion. I'm the executive director of the American Friends of the Parent Circle. For those of you who are joining for the first time, the Parent Circle is an organization made up of Israelis and Palestinians. It's a joint organization, and it's made up of more than 850 bereaved Israeli and Palestinian families. So all of the members have lost a loved one to the conflict and have chosen a path of reconciliation rather than revenge, have chosen to say, it stops with me. The cycle of hatred and revenge and violence and death stops with me. It need not happen to anybody else. It needed not happen to those members as well. Um, and they walk a path of dialogue, of empathy, of understanding the other side. And we are fortunate today to have one of our members with us, Yuda Beinin. Thanks for joining us. Yuda is joining us from Israel, from his kibbutz, Shamrat. And we also have here today with us two filmmakers, Lance Kramer and Brandon Kramer, brothers, who are Lance is a producer and Brandon's the director of Holding Liat. I hope all of you have had a chance to see the film. I have seen it many times. I still continue to find it inspiring, and we're honored and privileged to have Holding Liat be the first of three films in a series that we're showing over the next 3 weeks. It's called Real Stories and we'll be interviewing filmmakers and peacemakers to show about the power of narratives and the power of people's real lives to inspire change and to inspire a nonviolent future for Israel and Palestine to hear those stories today. So I'm going to get started. It looks like we have quite a number of people joining us. There's a lot of interest in this film and Holding Liat, which was shortlisted for Best Documentary in the Academy Awards and won the Best Documentary in the Berlin Biennale. We're also grateful to our partner Albi for helping put this together. Lance, Brandon, Yuda, thank you for joining me here today. To the audience, you will also have a chance. Thank you for being here today, audience. There's a lot of information coming at you in the chat. Also, you will have a chance to ask your own questions after I interview Brandon and Lance and Yuda. So let's get started. Brandon, I'd love to start with you. If you could tell us a little bit about the origin of this film. I mean, how did this come about? You obviously didn't plan on making this film. And I'm not sure also if the audience here knows, but you have a personal connection to the film. You're actually related to Yuda. You are cousins. So what was it like to document a personal experience for your family, and how did you balance being personally invested but also being a professional film director?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Shiri, and thank you to the Parent Circle. This is really, really an honor for us, and you all have been an incredible partner for this film. When you make a film, you bring it into the world, and you really hope that there are organizations out there with aligned values, and you all sort of fit the mission of this film very, very directly. And so we're very grateful for the work that you all do. Um, we found out about a day after October 7th that Liat and Aviv were missing. And naturally, we immediately reached out. So we're distant cousins of Liat's and Yehuda's. And we were all together at a bat mitzvah a few months before October 7th. So I just had an opportunity to reconnect with the family And when we found out that Liat and Aviv were missing, we immediately reached out to Yehuda, Liat's father, and expecting that message to go into the, I'm sure a wave of messages that he was getting and not expecting a response. And then a little over a week later, Yehuda responded and said, "Can we get on a phone call?" And Lance, Yehuda, and I hopped on the phone, and Yehuda shared with us that he was about to get on a plane to come to our hometown, Washington, D.C., with his grandson and to meet his other daughter, Tal, to advocate for Liat and Aviv's release. And in that conversation, Lance and I, as a documentary filmmaker, you just feel something that there's something that has happened with all three of our films where you feel this responsibility to pick up your camera when something very urgent and important and is unfolding. And Lance and I just felt that at the deepest level and started a process of documenting, within days after Liat was taken, what Yehuda and his family were going through, not knowing if it would be a film, if it would be just a family archive or anything, and then realizing that what we were filming was so radically different than any of the narratives we were seeing about the hostage families. Documentary has an ability to see depth and nuance and complexity in a way that social media and the media can't. And as the violence was escalating in the region, we felt that this family's narrative, in particular Yehuda's perspective, saying, "I don't want my daughter's captivity to be weaponized and used as justification for further violence," and the fact that that opened up conflict and schisms and disagreements within his family, we felt we had a window into a directly impacted family navigating this crisis in real time that would be very, very important.
It's amazing. It was what remarkable intuition and also courage, I think, Yudav, on your part to um, share such an intimate and personal and extremely difficult experience with the world. It's really a privilege to have you here today, Yuda. Um, and knowing that both you and Liat have become members of the parent circle. We've had many new members join since October 7th. Um, your story comes across so powerfully in the movie. Obviously, it's about Liat. It's about holding Liat, and yet your love for Liat and your determination and as her father in the film comes out so clearly. And at the same time, it's clear that you are a man of principles, of values, of ideology. There are things that you care strongly about, as well as your care for Liat. And I'm wondering, did you ever question those values, Yuda, throughout this whole thing? I mean, you had people telling you, just including your family, that either you were wrong or to put your values aside, or, tell us a little bit about what was going on inside. Was there a struggle? Were there doubts for you in terms of those values and principles?
Okay, first of all, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure from my side to be able to address all of you, and I thank you for joining this event. The it's important to keep in mind, and I mean that each of you have seen the movie just recently, but for me, these are events that happened over 1,000 days ago. So there's some distance between the events that are related in the movie and today, and it's important to understand that. So I'm not responding as if this were December 23. We're in July 26. To begin with, to understand the mindset, first of all, people need to understand that the initial response of the Israeli government was um, almost non-existent as far as we were concerned. And it was the American hostage families that managed to get organized very, very quickly. So much so that by Friday the 13th, Friday, October 13th, we had already been on a Zoom with President Biden, a Zoom that lasted for an hour and a half with the president, which I understand in retrospect
Wow.
is actually rather unusual, exceptional, the amount of time that he devoted to 13 families or something like that. We got the distinct impression from the president that this hostage business was something that was going to conclude. It was a matter of 2 weeks, 3 weeks negotiations, and that would be the end of it. Interestingly enough, in a conversation I had with Liat just last month, she said that her captors, who were hardcore Hamas members, were also surprised after the third week. They did not expect this whole this whole episode to take more than 3 weeks to resolve. It became clear to me very, very early on that the Israeli government was going to leverage this attack to many things and that releasing the hostages was not the first item on the list. Uh, it was clear to me, it was crystal clear to me, and many people disagreed, did not see it that way. Even the Hostage Family Forum, the larger hostage organization, it took them a year and a half before they would admit that Netanyahu was managing this war with an agenda that had very little to do with actually securing the release of the hostages. And there was no question in my mind. And against that background, so my views. My initial view stayed with me. There was no reason for me to upgrade that view, to change. And I said my piece wherever I had the opportunity to do so. Um, it was clear to me. I think that any person with eyes in their head could see the situation for what it was if they wanted to. Clearly, the Israeli search for revenge, or to teach Hamas a lesson, or to manage the Israeli electorate, which also was a consideration, were things that had very little to do with actually securing the release of the hostages. And there were Israeli politicians who were willing to write off the hostages altogether as part of the cost of the ongoing conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. That was not my point of view. There is one of the more central parts of the story that aren't in the film because they took place mostly that I didn't know and Brandon and Lance didn't know either. Was that there was a back channel as far as our family was concerned. My cousin, who was a former Federation director from Connecticut, had political contacts with his congressman, and he, through them, very quickly got directly to the Secretary of State and to the president. So President Biden was personally aware of Liat by name and was working towards her release. And again, I felt this is a something that I had the ability to use to accomplish, and I didn't think twice about using those connections to use those contacts.
What surprised you about yourself in those 54 days, if anything, looking back now?
Everybody. everybody who knew me were blown
Uh-huh.
away. I mean, it's I'm a kibbutznik. I mean, I could say I'm a farmer basically, not particularly not particularly well versed in how to address people or how to get a point across. I still think that I lack in that area. But basically, yeah, farmer, yeah. A lot of people who knew me said they were totally, even my brother said that, who's I know he's on the podcast somewhere, on the webinar somewhere, said that he was blown away by my performance throughout this ordeal. And I can say, if before October 7th, if you would have put me in front of a TV camera, I would have like not been able to function. I would have just totally collapsed. I think the importance or the weight of the subject, my daughter being a captive in Gaza, very quickly helped me overcome any kind of problem with appearing in front of a TV camera.
Yeah. You didn't think twice.
No.
Can I say one thing to chime in?
Please.
I just want to, I think it goes without saying when you see the film, but I want to acknowledge the courage that Yehuda in particular, but really the entire Benin Atzili family, his grandchildren, Joel, all of them had in opening up their lives to our camera at the most vulnerable weeks of their lives. It is an extraordinary thing to be navigating a crisis, to be having disagreements, tensions within your family. We're literally, myself and our cinematographer are sleeping on the hotel room floor outside of Yehuda and his wife's hotel room. And when they get the phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning from the IDF telling them that Liat and Aviv are not on the list, Yehuda's waking up, getting the phone, opening the door so we can come in and film them in their pajamas as they're getting that call. They let us in to such a fragile and delicate and sensitive moment so that all of you all and all the audiences that have seen this film could bear witness. And it just really deserves recognition.
I agree, and people are agreeing in the chat. So I hope you get to read some of those comments, Yuda. Um,
Yeah, I see the comments. There was
okay.
one comment I'd like to leave time to answer if it,
Yeah.
but you're running the show, not me.
Okay.
Whatever.
So just remember what it was.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay. Because I want to turn to Lance for a second because we're talking about this sort of not knowing of what's going to happen or like the future. I mean, we didn't know how the story was going to unfold, let alone what how the film would unfold. But what were the hopes for the film? And now, what do you hope that people walk away with? What you want them to get out of this film?
I'll also just echo the thanks for having us here, and obviously all that you do with the Parent Circle to support the family and so many other families. So we're really grateful to be here. Um, and in a sense, um, it's really remarkable to be having this conversation now. It wasn't like this was an engineered moment 2.5 years ago that we thought, oh, okay, we're going to make this film and then plan a webinar to share the film with the Parent Circle. Frankly, I wasn't aware of the Parent Circle and your work prior to everything that's unfolded over the last 2 years. So this has been a real exercise in kind of stepping into the unknown, which has often been terrifying and scary for all of us, most importantly for the family, but in a way for us too as filmmakers. And I think, what we really tried to do, in a sense, is what Brandon said was stay very focused on telling the story of this family, um, find the way to be as honest and as nuanced, and intimate as we could manage and as the family would allow. There were a lot of pressures along the way to kind of widen the frame. We would hear from people as we were talking about the
Mm,
film and trying to get support for the film that it needed to include other families or have an Israeli and a Palestinian family. And or not make the film at all. Like we would hear all these different challenges to what we were trying to do, um, of which a lot of times they were kind of valid, important points to consider. And, we really just ultimately kept coming back to this idea of how do we tell the story of this family, represented in as much of its kind of multitudes as we could, and hope that the telling of this story, first and foremost, would be something that each one of the family members would feel seen within. We made a commitment to every single one of the family members that we filmed with that they would see the film before it was completed. And that was part of our kind of ethical responsibility that we felt
Mhm.
very strongly about, was that they would give their blessing to the film. That wasn't a matter of having them exercise some kind of creative control or be in the edit room, but it was a sign of respect that we wanted to honor that courage that they had shared, and that vulnerability. And indeed, every single one of the family members saw the film before it was completed and gave a blessing. They saw the same version of the film that you all saw, this week. And the hope was that by sharing this film, it would open up an opportunity for dialogue and connection and understanding, um, about this conflict and beyond, at a time when there's obviously so much polarization and pain, and we're kind of told that we can't,
Right.
have that kind of connection, around storytelling in particular. And it's been really humbling to see and inspiring to see how people have responded.
Yeah.
And
And
also for the
I know it,
film, oh, sorry, I'm just saying, and also for
no,
the film to be part of a broader, effort. So not that this then was just the only story, but that it could live, within a constellation of other stories like Voice of Hindu Rajab and Children No More, all the important films that have been, surfacing. We always kind of hoped that this would be a contribution, but not have the ability of saying everything, but play, our role.
yeah. And it has had a great contribution for the parent circle. It's brought a lot of attention to the work that we do. And, Liat and Yuda being members of the parent circle has really opened up the film has opened up a lot of doors for us. So you should feel good about that. Um, there's one scene in the film, and obviously, everything took place in real life with the funeral scene, and the choice to dance, which obviously was both amazing and also hard to watch. Um, can you tell us a little bit about both? I mean, this is for Brandon and Yehuda, the choice to do the funeral, hold the funeral in that way, and then also about the filming of it. I guess Brandon, we'll start with you. Oh, you will start with you. Go ahead.
I don't know if Brandon knows the depth, or maybe he does. It's not something that we've discussed. It is something that I've discussed with Liat, because you have to admit it's a little um, unexpected, the whole scene there. But it turns out that, first of all, that Liat and Aviv themselves discussed death, dying, in an unrelated framework. So there was a pretty clear idea among them about how they wanted to approach the whole topic of death and dying. The actual funeral, I know that Liana discussed the details with her children. So
Mm,
there was agreement on that. And I think that if you just take an overview, it's a celebration of life. It's a celebration of overcoming. Um, and it's very positive
hmm
spin, a very positive wrapping around the whole set of events that occurred. We need to keep in mind that this isn't just a family tragedy, but we take into account what happened on Kibbutz Nir Oz altogether,
Mm,
where I mean the kibbutz was basically destroyed. I mean, like 90% of the housing was destroyed, burnt down, and just countless numbers of members were killed in the most horrible way. So the Aviv's funeral took place in that framework. And for those who may not be aware, but the kibbutz, particularly kibbutz Nir Oz, which was not a privatized kibbutz back then, is in many ways an extended family. So Aviv, who was born on the kibbutz, is was a child of everyone, basically. So the way Liat put on the funeral was a very strong and positive message to everyone,
yeah.
and it was well received. It's great.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Um, as a filmmaker, Lance and I always look for the contradictions in stories. We find that, I don't know, what makes life interesting and beautiful and just human beings interesting and beautiful are not the black or the white, but what exists in the gray. And that moment was one of many moments in the story where there is both this enormous celebration of family, of life, of community occurring alongside of a tragedy and real grief. And so being able to see Liat and and her community dancing, and then being able to right next to it see Aviv's mother say,
Mm,
"I can't dance with you." Like seeing those two moments connected, being able to see Liat going through the ruins of her kibbutz, and also being able and acknowledging the horrific tragedy that unfolded and was continuing to unfold for her family and her community, and then being able to end the film with her empathizing with the suffering and tragedy that was and still is affecting Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. These are the kind of reflections and spaces and ideas that are often put into boxes and siloed. And my
mm,
first conversation with Liat when she came out of captivity, when I asked her if she was willing to participate in the film, was her saying to me, "If I'm going to be a part of this film, I need you to promise me that you are not going to box me into some narrative that doesn't represent how I feel."
mm,
And I think one of the reasons she participated, which was really hard for her, was because she sensed from us that that's exactly what we were not wanting to do. We actually wanted to embrace the nuances of how this experience was for her and her family, and in that way, it was a perfect. Sometimes as a filmmaker, you have these perfect fusions where the protagonists in your film are deeply aligned with the filmmakers, and those values can create something like this film.
yeah. And it's actually the nuance that is something that is really captured in the film, but and also for the parent circle, right? Like the sense that Liat talks about empathy for the other side, empathy for Palestinians, right? And understanding and humanizing them. And those are really hard things to sort of be able to grasp and digest. And even amongst your family members, there was a lot of difficulty for some family members to be able to empathize with the other side. I'm sure you come across this in your social in your community, in your social networks, even amongst your family, of people who cannot who think that having empathy for Palestinians is impossible after October 7th. How do you deal with that?
At the family level, there isn't an issue there. I mean, there's broad agreement. What I can say is it's a topic that I do not discuss with my grandchildren. Um, I think that whatever impetus I had behind uh, having the film made, um, I realized very early on that first it's a documentary, and I wouldn't be surprised if my grandchildren aren't able to appreciate the film for another 10 years. You know, when they want to show their kids a story about their grandparents, basically. So it doesn't bother me that
Mm.
uh, my grandchildren and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on this. And to be very frank, I'm not digging into that topic. I just leave it be. There's no purpose served. Outside of that, I mean, where Liat is concerned, my brother, uh, my sister and her family, for the most part, understand that the current trajectory that Israel finds itself on vis-a-vis the Palestinians is something that is unsustainable, and there needs to be a change. And how we go about doing that, that's a broad topic. I don't know if it's appropriate to get into that, how we affect that change in this framework. So
Mhm.
I won't talk about it. Maybe we'll have an opportunity in the future. Um, but it's a topic which I try to navigate very carefully within the family.
Yeah.
Now, people in the framework of my close friends, there's also a broad agreement, more or less. And those who don't agree with me, um, well, I'm not so kind in addressing people who feel that this conflict can be managed or that the Palestinians don't deserve some kind of recognition. I see, you know, at this point, I can, some of the questions that were posed about anti-Zionism, Zionism, whatever, I can clarify very clearly that one can't be, one can't define themselves as a Zionist if they're in the same sentence willing to deny the Palestinians their right for self-determination. That's an equation, that's a non-equality. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. And if you don't understand that that the same goes for the Palestinians in many respects. They need to understand that, you know, while they're claiming their right for self-determination, there are other people here, Israelis, who also have a history, a unique history, unfortunately, and that basically that the challenge here is to recognize the humanity of the other,
Mm.
uh, and to sit down and talk. There is no other way that this is going to end. Not militarily, not demographically, just, well, you know, let's get real. Uh, every conflict comes to an end at some point, so let's start ending it.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, there are no lack of unscrupulous politicians who are willing to leverage, you know, clickbait kinds of statements in order to advance their own careers or to garner supporters or whatever. You know, a kind of reactionary mindset to events instead of taking control of the situation. This is a challenge, and I can say that. I think the parent circle actually is at very at the forefront, very near the forefront of attempting to change this dynamic. And it's so important to bring this message that it doesn't have to, things don't have to be the way they are. Mutual recognition, mutual reconciliation is the only viable path forward for the land between the river and the sea. There is no question in my mind about that.
Thank you, Dan. I know you paid a very high price for people to stop and listen to you say that. Um,
Okay, yeah. I mean, look, it's the issue is true that having a family member who's a victim of the violence provides a certain degree of agency that,
mhm,
nobody asked for it. Nobody's happy to be in that position, but it is what it is. And there's no reason, in my mind, look,
mhm.
Liat sees the situation a little bit differently than I do. I mean, she is dedicated to moving on with her life and is not inclined to get involved politically. Unless Brandon or Lance specifically ask her. Then if I ask her, forget it, she's not going to do that. If Brandon or Lance ask her, she'll consider. But for me, the need to be part of the struggle to bend the arc, to change, to change the reality of our existence is inborn for me. It's
Yeah.
important.
This film has been shown all over the world. I think last time I saw you, Brandon, you were getting ready to go to Japan for a multi-city tour. I mean, it's been shown all over. And Lance, what are some of the reactions to the film that have stayed with you?
Yeah, I mean, the film since last February when it premiered at Berlin, um, I lost the exact count, but it's been over 250 screenings now in more than 25 countries. Um, something like 75 film festivals and dozens of colleges and movie theater. I mean, it's just been remarkable, including what you just
Yeah,
mentioned with Brandon. He was in Japan, um, where the film I think was screened in 60 different movie theaters across Japan alone.
amazing.
Um, these are things we could have never imagined. As we were sitting, as Brandon, Yoni, and Hila were with the family in Israel, or we were in hotel rooms. There's like no way that we could have imagined that that kind of global response would have been possible. Um, it's been a very beautiful and inspiring thing that in such a dark moment, you could have so many people coming together to watch a film and also be in the same room, connecting, responding to the same work. It's not like there's been a different version of the film playing in each one of those settings. It's the same film, the same
Yeah.
story that thousands and thousands of people have been exposed to. Um, in Berlin, I'll just share, I mean, there's so many anecdotes that we've, come across, but two that are sticking out in my mind. At the premiere of Berlin, which was sold out, it was the first time anyone in the world was seeing the film. One of the first people to raise their hand and speak up in the Q&A was a man from Lebanon.
Mm,
And he shared that that's where he was from and his family's. Many of them were still there. This was at a time when rockets were flying
mm,
uh, between Israel and Lebanon. And he had said that he had never met Israeli, but that he felt compelled to come to the screening. And he felt that after watching the film, he saw a family that reminded him of his own family. And
mm,
that, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, in a sea of darkness, I saw a ray of light in this family.
mm,
And he came up, he was in the back of the room and he came up, he asked if he could have permission to come up to the front of this 700-person auditorium and hug each one of the family members. And that's what he did.
yeah,
Um, it's really just an extraordinary moment. And
it's beautiful.
another moment that also just sticks out was the premiere of the film in Israel when it
Mm,
was the opening night. film last May at Doc Aviv, which is the largest documentary film festival in Israel. And we had about 1,400 people in the Tel Aviv Opera House. It was also a sold out screening. And literally people were like applauding during different parts of the film. They were talking like to the screen, almost in like a direct dialogue with the family. And it received the 5 minute standing ovation. The family did, and it was really extraordinary to also share the film, you know, there in Israel. It's not to say that it's all been Pollyanna as well. Just maybe just end this kind of remarks with, we've had, of the 250 screenings, there's actually been 4 screenings that were canceled, 2 that were canceled by Jewish film festivals because the film was too progressive, and 2 that were canceled by presenters because the film was not seen to be too pro-Palestinian enough at first, after they had programmed it, but then someone internally saw the film and had an issue. In all 4 cases, we engaged with a dialogue with the presenters and basically made the case for why it was important to actually give the audience that chance to see the film and decide for themselves, and to open up that conversation rather than deny it to the audience. And in all 4 cases, the film was reprogrammed. Those screenings took place, and they were very, very impactful. And those were really important conversations. And in all 4 cases, the presenters expressed out how much they felt it was important to actually screen the film. So,
Wow.
We've been seeing that kind of, even in a moment of friction,
Yeah.
a lot of constructive progress.
Yeah, and just so people here know, you can screen the film in your community. We'll put some information in the chat about how to get in touch with Lance and Brandon and you can have a screening in your community. There's now just a free discussion guide, so you can host or facilitate a conversation with your community. So there'll be more information about that in the chat. I encourage you to do so. Also, we're going to open up to questions and answers now from the audience. So there's a little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please put the questions in there, and I'll pick from those. The first question that I know is on my mind and many other people's minds here is Yuta, can you tell us about Liat and how she's doing today, and where is she living? Is she back to work? How is the family doing?
Sure. Let me see, where do we begin? First of all, Aya, we'll start from the youngest. Aya is still in the army. She will be getting out of the army in October. And then she's going on a trip beginning in Thailand, and who knows after that. Netta is studying chemistry at the Hebrew University. Ofri is working in the garage at Kibbutz Nir Oz in his father's footsteps. And he lives on Nir Oz. And Liat returned to Nir Oz actually quite a while ago. She was among the first 20 residents of the kibbutz to return. She's now on a membership track. Actually, she and Aviv were supposed to have been voted on for membership on October 7th, actually.
Wow.
So that got messed up. But now, and she's very essential to the cultural scene of the kibbutz, also the memorial committee. And she's also a liaison between the kibbutz and 2 new groups of people who are coming to the kibbutz. There are two groups. One is a pre-army group, nucleus of people from the Hashomer Hatzair movement, and the second group is a group of older people, also graduates of Hashomer Hatzair, will be coming to the kibbutz. The kibbutz is one big construction site. I guess the government and other other groups have finally gotten their act together in terms of funding the reconstruction of the kibbutz, and there's a lot going on there. Liat herself has returned to teaching already. This is the end of the school year. She taught this school year in her regular job, and
Wow.
she also works at the Holocaust Museum at Kibbutz Yad Mordechai, where she is involved in program development for the museum. Um, I think that um, for the most part, she has her situation under control and is altogether uh, uh, very, very well poised to continue with her life in a positive way.
I'm so happy to hear that. Please send her our love and our support. There are a number
Of
of
course.
questions here to you, Yuda, that are somewhat similar. I'll read you the first one, and it says, "You've always had strong opinions. I'm curious as to how, if at all, your perspective on the Israeli-Palestinian situation conflict has evolved since October 7th." And someone else wrote a similar question. I believe you said in the film when you first moved to the kibbutz, you thought that you'd share the land with Palestinians and Jewish people together. What do you think about that now? So I think people want to hear how your thoughts have changed on this.
I think the overall arc of my perception hasn't really changed. Maybe it's become sharpened a little bit. The trajectory that the right wing in Israel sees for Israel is something that has never, ever worked out historically. Yeah, like the Maccabees and Bar Kokhba, these characters were big heroes of the Zionist movement. But anybody who has a inkling of history knows that these events both ended tragically. Uh, and it and simply for me, it boils down to the agglomeration of uh, religious concepts and political concepts, where you have them merged in together, where your religious agenda becomes your political agenda in a sentence. This doesn't work. It never has worked, and it won't work now. So until is and if Israel continues on that trajectory, it'll disintegrate of its own accord eventually, as it always has in the past. So if we're interested in having a Jewish entity in Israel, we need to find a different way to realize that. And a large part of that is in ending Jewish supremacy as a means to achieving Jewish independence in Israel. It means recognizing that there are other people here as well, and nobody's going anywhere. Uh, and what I find problematical is, there are 150, 200 different groups, who are advocating, one state, two states, three states, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what the solution is. I know that people need to sit down and start talking about it. And whatever people decide, Israelis and Palestinians, that's what will be. And that's the most important thing, to recognize the humanity of the other, to understand that there are disagreements and that there are ways of resolving disagreements, and that this incessant bloodshed is not going to lead to anywhere. So what I've said regarding the mix-up between Jewish religious agendas and politics, and I say this in the film in a certain way, to a certain degree, or to a large degree, depending on where you're standing. That also applies to Palestinian society. It's a very conservative society, and they need to do self-accounting on their own right to a large degree. Um, and hopefully, just by reaching out, though, we can bring people together to understand that this is the way forward. We don't necessarily have to agree on everything, but it's not so much that peace is an objective, but peace is certainly the path
Mm.
to moving forward. So,
Now bring the U.S. into that
okay, all
conversation too, because one of the questions is, what would you like the relationship between Israel and America, and then in parentheses, and American Jews to be?
okay. If the answer to this question is let me start, and we'll see where we end up. Um, my experience running around Washington in the halls of Congress and in the Senate, meeting senators and congressmen, my contention is, and I've said this already for quite a while, that any change that happens in the Middle East is going to stem from the House of Representatives in the United States. And the first time I said this, said, ma pitom, that's not realistic, whatever. I am more convinced than ever because I see what's happening now, and not only in the Democratic Party, also in the Republican Party. And there are Israelis who are saying this, who, when I say this, they agree with me, that the United States has to, it is upon the United States to take the lead in this and to uh, take first of all, it's a straight up American interest. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. And again, I say this in the movie very clearly, and more people are coming to understand that my interpretation of the events is actually correct. That the behavior of Israel in the Middle East is diametrically opposed to straight up American interests. Let there be no question about that. People in Israel think that, yeah, we're going to have some kind of peace agreement with Saudi Arabia, but I have very sad news for these people that there is not going to be any kind of agreement with Saudi Arabia until the Palestinian issue is addressed. And they say this. I mean, so, there are many, many people in Israel who are insistent upon deluding themselves as to what the future holds. And all we need to do is persevere, a little bit more force, a little bit more military action, and they think that this is going to solve the problem. And they could not be more wrong. Now, I think that the most effective thing that we can do as a group, as individuals and as a group, is to start approaching our congressmen and to make our views known that what's going on with Israel is not acceptable. It is, first of all, first and foremost, not in Israel's best interest, and it is certainly not in the interest of the United States. And we need to get this message across. Having said that, so as I be in our discussion before the webinar, I said that so I'm working together with a few other people, Lance and Libby from Albi, and with Moz, and my cousin Jerry, and we're going to try to put this idea into action with a plan at sometime after the next elections in November. And we'll see.
Yuta, what gives you hope?
Look, it's it's the way you live your life.
Mm.
I don't see another way. Um, on the one hand, I want to make clear that I'm not deluding myself. But on the other hand, I'm not giving up either. I don't see another way to be.
Mm. That's amazing. Thank you. Please don't change.
No plans.
Brandon, Lance, what about you guys? What gives you hope to keep doing this work? I mean, I hear you're now in cooperation with UDA and others to work on political plans in the US. And what gives you guys hope to keep doing this work?
I mean,
Go ahead.
I mean, this is not, it's not, honestly, you all at the parent circle and Liat and the other members of the parent circle. I mean, when people ask us all the time at Q&As, they say, well, you didn't know if Liat would be released. You didn't know how Liat would process what she went through if she was released. So what would have happened if she came back and she didn't have the feelings that she had? What if she didn't join the parent circle? What if she, and those questions come up, and there's an answer to that question, but the more important thing is that's not what happened. And she did
Hmm.
come out, and she did join the parent circle, and she did, within days of being released, publish an op-ed in the New York Times saying, I don't want a single Palestinian to be harmed or killed in retribution for what happened to me and my family. And it's in the film, but um, to be that close to somebody who is suffering from grief. I mean, I was there in the hospital when we found out Aviv was killed. And I was there seeing Liat's grown children on her lap as she's consoling them in the moments after. And it was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen in my life. And to be bearing witness to somebody going through that level of grief, and then days later sitting with her and sharing with us that what happened to her she does not want to be happening to even the people that held her or anybody in Gaza or any Palestinian. It might sound simple, and maybe we can all look at that and say, oh, I wish I could do that if I was in her shoes. But to see it and to feel it, it felt like we were bearing witness to something truly profound and extraordinary, and um, some much needed medicine in a very, very sick time in the world.
A beautiful way of putting it. Thank you. Lance.
Sure. And just to add to Brandon, I mean, certainly the family, Liat, each member of the family, it's been an amazing source of, hope, as have other family members that I've met who are part of the parent circle through this journey. I wish we were meeting under other circumstances, but given
Yeah.
the circumstance, it's been extraordinary. And, there's been moments that we also could have never planned where when the film was premiering in the US theatrically, Liat came over to the US, and Amy Goodman had Liat, Brandon, and Kauter Ben Hana, the director of Voice of Rajab, on the same program. They were sitting
Hmm.
in the same studio talking about both films together. Liat encouraging people to see the Voice of Rajab and how moved she was by um, that harrowing story. And seeing like two pieces of art also just sit side by side, two films, two film teams, like sit side by side, um, directly impacted people from different sides of the conflict, using art and dialogue to try to find some way of moving forward.
Yeah.
And then you all just continuing that spirit with this series. I think that's given me a tremendous amount of hope.
Yeah.
And
And on that note, I'd love to share another anecdote about Liat. I don't even know if you know this, Yuda, but Liat joined the Parent Circle's women's group, which is a joint Israeli-Palestinian group of bereaved mothers and wives and sisters. And after it was a joint meeting. It was a day that they spent together, the Palestinian women and the Israeli women. And Liat came, and she told her story there about being held captive and losing Aviv. And afterwards, I learned that, the Palestinian women have their own group chat on WhatsApp. And there was all of this chatter between them all about Liat they couldn't believe that she had come. They could not believe that she had been held hostage and she was there with them saying, I am with you. They were just floored by that and so moved and inspired. And to me, that's everything. That is, the next years of fuel and energy for those Palestinian women and of course the Israeli women to continue on their journey, which is not easy.
Certainly, the Israeli government and almost certainly the Israeli media make sure that stories like this don't reach the
For
headlines.
sure.
There are many
For
more
sure.
Palestinians than people are aware of. I mean, I've met them. I've met with
Yeah.
people. This is not a headline grabbing
Yeah.
thing these days. And the extent to which Palestinians are amenable to the message of recognizing the humanity of the other is well hidden. And I mean, it's a campaign that's taking place on purpose. It's not a
Yes.
coincidence.
Yes.
People need to be aware. American politicians need to be made aware of this
Yes.
so that their
Well,
actions vis-a-vis Israel are more in line with reality.
I want to thank you guys, all of you, for making extraordinary headlines with this film and sharing your story. We are very fortunate to have had this opportunity to be with you here today. Thank you to Albie for making this possible. We have two more films in the film series, Real Stories. If you haven't signed up, next Tuesday is The Voice of Hind Rajab, and the following Tuesday is Children No More, all excellent documentaries. And we will be here exactly the same time, same place next Tuesday. Thank you, Yuda, Brandon, Lance, and everybody else on the.
I want to say
Yes,
Hilam Adali is an amazing
yes,
producer and director.
yes.
There's a very close relationship between her and Liat actually that developed as a
Mm,
result of the movie
mm.
Holding Liat.
Yeah. And Hila is a co-producer of Holding Liat and also the director of Children No More. So,
And hopefully we'll see you all in the fall.
Yes.
Thank
Take
you
care,
so much.
everybody. Thanks for joining.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Sherry.
having us. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.